Hello, my name is Frank Monaghan. I'm the Staff Tutor in Education in the London region, and this screencast is aimed at helping you to develop your academic writing skills. And in this screencast we'll be looking in particular at the topic of starting to write at Level 2. Having completed Level 1, you may be asking yourselves what is going to be different at Level 2. Well, the first thing to say, of course, is that it's not Level 1. By which I mean you're probably expecting things to get a bit tougher, both in terms of the sort of concept you'll be dealing with, but also the kinds of writing we'll be asking you to do. On the other hand, it's not Level 3. And it's important to remember that you are still developing as students, as thinkers, and as writers. If you've been listening to the AV, you might have come across Beccy Mills, a student who was on E212, and she talked about her experience of moving up from her Level 1, where she did quite well. And one of the first things that struck her was that there was a drop in grade on her first TMA. And Beccy put this down to the academic writing as much as it was about the content. And she describes two responses that she had to that. The first one was that she paid close attention to her tutor's feedback, and it's really important that you look at this to get the things from your tutor about how you might improve next time. But also she mentioned the importance of attending tutorials. Now we know everybody can't attend them, but there's undoubted advantage if you can get along to them, not just because you get to meet your tutor, but also because you'll get to work with other students and talk to them about the kinds of issues that they face in their writing and the way they overcome them and work together with them. You'll have also heard Grace Clifton, who is the programme director, and Grace talked in quite a lot of detail about the step up from Level 2 and the kinds of writing that's required. And I just want to go through some of the points that Grace made. And the first thing that she talks about is this idea of developing your own voice. And it can be difficult to understand what that means at Level 2. But she gives some examples of it. She mentions, for example, the need to become a critical reader and writer. Now, that doesn't mean saying this is great and that was rubbish. It's about how you use your reading and your writing to become more reflective about the kind of concepts and theories, the case studies that you're reading them, and how they tie in with your own experience and thoughts. So it's about making connections, making comparisons. Grace also talks about some technical matters, about things like summarising rather than repeating sources. So this issue about trying to become a more concise writer is also very important at Level 2. And we'll come back to that as well. And one of those features is about making comparisons across texts. So we're asking you now to be thinking not just about what's in any particular chapter or unit, but more broadly as you go through the module at the block level, and at the end of it, indeed making comparisons and contrasts across the whole of the module itself. And finally, Grace talks about the importance of the learning journal to develop your academic writing. Now, it really mustn't become the sort of chore, the kind of thing that sometimes people do with diary writing, where they're just so frustrated about what to write that they record every meal they eat. It's not for that. It really should be used in ways that help you, however they help you. And some students use it in very interesting ways. So I was talking to some who said that they did things like have a separate section for each TMA with the question there, and then every time they read something that seemed to have anything to do with that, they made a note of it. So whether it was a case study, they would try and summarise it, or a theorist, they would make a note of that, so that when they came to write, they already had a store of things that they could draw on. And also, it gave good practice in making little summaries of things, which is already an important part of practicing for the actual writing you're going to do. You will also have come across Naomi Holford, who is the module team chair. And Naomi also makes some very interesting points about the differences at Level 2 and what's expected. And one of the big points she stresses is about not wasting your word count. And she gives examples of that, which ties in again then with what Grace was saying about learning the art, really, the craft of summarising some of the case studies. Now, in the module books, of course, we go into quite a lot of detail to try and flesh out so you get a really clear view. But in your writing about them, you have a small limited word count. So it's important that you try to just focus on the really important aspects, the important conclusions that can be drawn. from the reading that you do. And again, Naomi makes this point about making contrasts with other relevant studies, so that all the time that you're making notes of these things, that you can then go backwards and forwards between them to see how they fit with each other at different points in the module. And the final point that I wanted to make that Naomi talks about is always being explicit about why something is useful in answering the question. TMAs are very specific, and you really need to keep your writing focused on answering that question all the time. And if you find you've written something when you read it back over that doesn't address the question, delete it. Okay, so now it's time to turn to the learning outcomes, and we can see a number of important points here that I've put them in red so that you can see how some of these words crop up over and over again. So looking at, for example, the educational aims, you'll see lots of references to critical analysis, critical reflection, making links. If we look at the cognitive skills, that word critical comes up again, analysis comes up again, being systematic is in there, making assessments. If we look at the cognitive skills, you'll see the same words occurring again. And if we look at the practical professional skills, there they are again, analysis, reflection, assessing, evaluation. And perhaps most evidently in terms of writing in the key skills, if we look at the things like organisation, articulating, communicating, reading critically, responding sensitively, plan, manage your time. These are things which are very close to the topic of writing at level 2. So, where can you find support with this? Well, the first and most obvious person to go to is your tutor. And you can contact them by phone, obviously, and by email. And I think it's worthwhile thinking about how you use email, because that gives you a chance to formulate your question carefully, and that in a sense gives you a chance to practice the writing, just as with the learning journal. The writer E.M. Forster once said, "How do I know what I think till I see what I write?" And that's very true. So if you are writing to your tutor, it gives you an opportunity to put it quite concisely. And similarly, the tutor group forum is another great area of support, not just because you can then exchange ideas and questions with your fellow students and with your tutor, but again, it gives you a chance to do some writing. Don't waste those opportunities. Then there are the module materials themselves, and when we look at the next screencast where we talk about paragraphs and topic sentences, you'll see how you can use the module materials to actually act as a model for your own writing. Student Home, of course, has lots of practical work that you can do on various writing skills. There are sections on developing your academic English, there are lots of study skills, there are things about reading critically and so on. There's a massive storehouse of things, and it may be that when you get your feedback from your tutor, they may mention specific ones that they think would be good for you to do. So do watch out for those, and do have a look at them on Student Home. It's a real treasure trove. And finally, there's the student support team, where if you are having particular difficulties, you can go and ask them, would it be possible to have an individual support session? So having covered that, those are the basics of this. So that's enough for this first screencast, I think. There'll be another one coming up on paragraphs and topic writing, which should help you. There will be more to come in the future, so thank you for watching this one, and do check back in the future. Bye bye.